Hey YouTube, this is Jack Fables here to give you my very first review video, and it's going to be about Netflix's original anthology series, Love, Death, and Robots. It's got robots, it's got monsters, vampires, zombies, time travel even. It's all kinds of weirdness with this show. And I gotta say, overall, I love it. It's a great show. It's a great series. Basically what they did, they took independent artists and within a sci-fi fantasy genre, and they created their own 5 to 20 minute videos and episodes. Now, most of the series, though, is of course a little left-wing when it comes to the politics, but overall, I enjoyed it. Despite the fact that I disagree with a lot of their views, Netflix actually did a very great job with this series, especially when it came to the art styles. Now, I'm going to give you 3 reviews on my 3 favorite episodes. I'm not going to have enough time to tell you each and every one of them. That's going to take forever, and I don't have permission to do an hour video. So, my first review, my favorite episode on there is called Suits. Now, basically, the story is that farmers are defending their property from an alien invasion on an alien planet. Think of it as Starship Troopers with rednecks, and it's very great. It's a great series, and it's produced by a company called Blur Studios, and it's directed by Frank Boxen, I believe, Frank Boxen, and it's based on a short story written by Stephen Lewis. Now, I love the art style. It felt like this was like a promo for a video game that I would love to play. At first, I thought this was like set in some kind of weird alternate history on Earth, but as the story progressed, and I found out that this is basically set on an alien planet. These are basically kind of like Wild West for these guys. They can't rely on the government, basically. They rely on themselves and on their own ingenuity to defend their farms and their fellow human beings against these giant cockroach-looking aliens. Unfortunately, the only thing I had a problem with it is just too darn short. Just short, too short. That should have been a movie. I felt like based on the art style alone, it was great. And if it was a promo for a video game, I definitely would have played it. I would have bought the game itself. Now the second one that I enjoyed is called Good Hunting. Now it's a steampunk Chinese folk tales written by a company called Red Dog Culture, if I said like Red Dog Culture House, and it's based on a story by an author named Ken Liu, and it's directed by Oliver Thomas. Now this one I enjoyed as well as for the art style. It felt like I was watching Avatar, not just for the subject matter, of course, but also based on the 2D animation. And the story is basically the son of a spirit hunter, which is set in China, and it's alternate history, a steampunk China, is hunting a fox spirit. I can't pronounce what the technical term is for the Chinese fox spirit. I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to offend anybody. But the fox spirit has apparently had his daughter, and the son of the spirit hunter and the fox spirit's daughter, they become close friends. And as they grow up, China is changing faster and faster and advancing in this story. And it goes from steam trains to steampunk to automatons to steampunk cyborgs. Now, the key point of the story is basically as China becomes more and more advanced and more technological, it loses contact and loses touch with magic. So, according to legend, fox spirits can actually change from fox to human. They can change shape. But as there's less and less magic in the world, it's harder for a fox spirit to turn back into a fox. So, by the end of the story, she can't even turn into a fox because there's no magic anymore in China. Now, the whole theme of the story definitely has to do with definitely anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, and how to balance both culture and technology. Now, definitely, and this is definitely set in colonial China, basically when English traders and English tourists, and basically kind of like Hong Kong was, where it's basically an English province until it was reclaimed by China. It's, and of course, English, they didn't treat Chinese people with the dignity that they deserve. They didn't treat them as equals. In fact, the main character works for a hotel and works on their trolley system, and he's not even allowed to be in the hotel. He's only allowed to work in the trolley system. But it also allows him to have an education on how to produce his own technology, produce his own, I want to say his own inventions, his own creations. He basically because at that point they had rudimentary robotics. They got like little, little chimney sweeps and such, shoe shiners and everything. And it's like in more and more advanced until at the end of the story, it turns out that his friend had grown up to become a courtesan. And, she's a fox spirit, and she has her pride, and but unfortunately, she winds up with an Englishman who had a thing for cyborgs. Ugh. Needless to say, he forced her to change her body into being a half human, half steampunk body, to where, and she kills him, and before he has his way with her. Now she goes to her friend, who has become basically a steampunk genius. He basically gives her upgrades to where not only is she able to take her revenge out on the colonizers and their English masters, it was basically a way for her to transform back into a fox, basically reclaiming her magic almost. Now, the reason I go a little bit more in depth in this one, because this one to me is definitely talks about definitely anti-imperialism, like I said. But it also is basically the Chinese, the indigenous people, are using the Western technology in order to not only reclaim their identity, but also to advance their own culture. So to me, it's basically, it sucked. I mean, it's definitely an issue about rape culture as well as privilege and like I said, keep saying, anti-imperialism. But it was very well done. And it definitely had a lot of stereotypes as far as like English people and Chinese people go, but the story was very well done. It was very well done. My heart broke, and I actually was cheering along as the story goes, as this fox spirit was able to reclaim her form, which is basically like a steampunk automaton version of a nine-tailed fox. Now the third one that I enjoy, my third favorite one out of the whole series, was called Shapeshifters. Now, basically, again, this is another alternate history where werewolves are part of the United States military as well as helping out Iraqi or Afghani terrorists. The story starts with two soldiers, they're best buddies, and they're werewolves, and they experience bigotry and prejudice not only from their fellow soldiers, who are human, of course, but also from the locals. Now, one of the character's best friend, gets killed by a terrorist werewolf. And he goes out and gets revenge. He kills the terrorist werewolf along with his pack, and he comes back and he reports in, and he's basically tired of it. He's tired of the abuse. He's tired of the prejudice that he and his fellow werewolves get in the military, and he quits. He goes AWOL, and nobody wants to stop him. Now, the whole theme that I got from this story was definitely how not just the racial aspect of it, because blacks, and not just blacks, but Muslim, Arabic, Hispanic, even gay servicemen do experience prejudice in the military. Now, I got nothing against what you do in your bedroom is your own business, what you believe in, what God you worship, your own sexuality. I got no problem with that as long as you do your job. That's all I would ask. That's all any libertarian truly wants, is that you do your job well. It doesn't matter what you are. Now, as far as the story goes, it definitely illustrates how a lot of minority servicemen feel. They put in so much work and so much time in the military that they get persecuted by their fellow soldiers. And I enjoyed this story, and it was also, this one was written by an author named Mark Kloss, I believe I'm saying that right. It was also made by Blur Studios, but it's a completely different animation style as Blur Studios did in the last one, Suits. This one was definitely more realistic. It looked almost like a live-action movie. Now, overall, just based on those, I enjoyed Love, Death, and Robots. They had a wide variety of stories, from a junkyard monster to a robot who wishes to seek the meaning of life. It was quite a diverse amount of stories, all with similar genres: science fiction, horror, fantasy, and it was really well done. And to me, like I said, I give it an A plus, or not even an A. Well, not an A plus because of the politics. Maybe give it like an A minus. I would have given it a real A plus if the politics was a little bit more diverse, like if they showed more libertarian and conservative views. But overall, the series was very well written. It wasn't condescending. Of course, you would see the politics and the political views, but it didn't condemn people who disagreed with them. And that's why I give it an A minus, because they truly were trying to show diversity and they weren't trying to attack other viewpoints. Now, now I do hope that they do more in the series. And Netflix has done a great job in it. And again, now the one thing I do hope for is that in future seasons that they do have true diversity in thought. That's what I want, because I feel like they were focusing too much on the politics and identity of the creators as well as the identity of the king characters rather than the quality of work, but which thankfully the quality outshone that. So they weren't focusing too much on, they were trying to balance it out, and it was a nice little balance. But in order to have more diverse audience, you need to have true diversity in your writers as well as the subject matter. Now, of course, this is science fiction and horror, so it's not a lot of conservative writers out there that in this genre that I think Netflix would want to go to. But if they can make that effort, I think this could be a very great series, a very great. It's basically, to me, I felt like I was watching Tales from the Crypt almost with a science fiction feel. It was great, and it was the morality tales, this message. It was wonderful. It was a great series. So and that's all the time I have today, hey guys. Be sure to check out my Patreon page. I'm going to give you the link in the description below. And it's got a great, I just got a great bunch of tiers. And also be sure to check out 50 Shades of Red. That's 50 Shades of Red. They are a great conservative podcast as well. I'm one of their podcasters on there. And I'll be sure to give a link in the description below for them as well. And I also need to remind you guys that, or also tell you guys that every Thursday we do a live podcast called Hot Topics, and basically we talk about um, all the popular stuff that's been going on the week before. Every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and like again, 50 Shades of Red. Be sure to check them guys out. We would really love you guys' support. And again, thank you guys so much for listening, and give me your comments and what you think about my thoughts. And debates are more than welcome, as well as your own views. And be sure, one more thing, don't disrespect or you will be deleted. Have a good day.